And probably the two most important things you need to know about Detroit is we are a majority black city, and everything is filtered through the eyes of racism that exists in American society. So we are scapegoated. The emergency manager, who was appointed by Governor Snyder, said the problem was that we were a lazy bunch of people. So the second thing you need to know about Detroit is that we're a city of neighborhoods. And all of the discussion about the model city that Detroit is going to become are models of gentrification in which the downtown will be saved and the neighborhoods will be destroyed. And the neighborhoods have been in the process of destruction for 50 years. But they have been particularly impacted both by the economic crisis and the bubble, the housing bubble that encouraged people to, many people had almost paid off their mortgages, but they were told to get a second mortgage. And they got a second mortgage, and that's what got them in trouble. We also have been devastated, even though the Latino population represents maybe 10% of Detroit. Nonetheless, when the deportations happened, there are neighborhoods that were destroyed by a combination of people fleeing to Canada and people being deported. So what I want to say to you is that the destruction of Detroit was planned. It was worked out, and we're not paranoid when we say that. It's government policies that have put us in this situation. Particularly the fact that both the federal government and the state government contribute less to developing the infrastructure and the services of our cities and towns. This isn't a unique problem with Detroit, but like with other heavily industrialized cities, whether we're talking about Flint or Cleveland or Pontiac, we all have similar problems. So I work on eviction defense, and we have thousands of people who are going to be evicted from their homes either because of mortgage problems or because of tax foreclosure. And in the case of tax foreclosure, if you don't pay your high taxes within 2 years in a row, they put your house up for an auction and don't even send you a letter. Unless you read a fancy legal journal, you won't find out about it until the person comes and knocks on your door and says, I own this house. We will face 29,000 tax evictions in October. So while we work on mortgages, the tax evictions are even greater. Now, one of the big problems is that houses have mortgages at very high value that aren't worth that. For example, a neighbor a half a block from me has been fighting, we've been fighting for a year to keep them in their home, not against the bank, by the way, but against Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae, a government agency that is paid for by our tax dollars, is the agency that throws more people out of their homes than any place else because they own 65% of all the mortgages in this country. Banks often service for Fannie Mae, but it's actually Fannie Mae that's got the principles and the rules that the banks are expected to go through. So we now have a situation where the family in the next block to me, their house at the most would be worth $12,000 to $18,000. Fannie Mae says they can buy that house for $90,000. And my neighbors would say exactly what you said. It's simply unheard of. But that's what they are demanding. So what we are demanding is stop the foreclosures and evictions, stop the blight by keeping people in their homes. They always talk about blight, but it's the government policies that created the blight in the first place. They're the ones that kick people out of their homes. Now the homes are totally demolished, and they want to spend millions of dollars on knocking down those homes. Many of them are still worth saving. So the first thing is keep people in their homes. Just like with the water shutoffs, keep the water on.
That's right.
The second thing is reduce the mortgage principal on all the underwater homes. How much time? 1 minute left, okay. The third point is to sell the repossessed homes to the owner occupants at market values. They refuse to do that now. Why? Because they say, well, we don't want to reward irresponsible behavior. They would rather sell it to the developer at below market prices. Now, the fact of the matter is, we, as Detroit Eviction Defense, can help people save their homes. But we have to do more than at an individual level. We have to change the policies. And that means we march, that means we work with other people. And one of the most exciting things is that the people whose homes have been saved have joined Detroit Eviction Defense. So we've been able to transform ourselves into a much more community organization.
I bring you greetings from Michigan Welfare Rights. I bring you happiness in terms of you should be convinced that we're not going to let this water fight come to a neighborhood near you unless we're all dead. Okay, unless we're all dead. You know, before I got here today, I had this event scheduled for next Friday. And I had already been to the march. I did a full day of work today and went to the march at the Freedom Fridays down at the Water Department and was sitting minding my own business at one of my favorite places called Z's. And young people and middle-aged men and seniors were sending over drinks and cocktails, and I was eating kebabs and everything. I was minding my own business. And Mary called and said, you know, you have 10 minutes to get here. Get where? Boy, it's a good thing I lived on the east side of the city of Detroit and know how to make things happen quickly. Really. I want to say some words to you. Dodge, Main, Huber Avenue Foundry, Lynch Road Assembly, Mac, Stamping Plant, Kelsey Hayes, Cadillac Fleetwood, Cadillac Glass, Cadillac Assembly. All of these were places that were icons and dinosaurs in and around the city of Detroit, certainly around Wayne County. And there were places that everybody in Detroit has some connection to, your parents, your grandparents, because all of the money, the resources, and the finances that built middle-income neighborhoods across the world started here. When Ford said, I'll pay you $5 a day if you leave that Jim Crow madness and come north, people showed up, running from violence, running from bad things. And that $5 a day activity started something new, a paradigm shift in the United States of America that has been duplicated around the world. We were able to buy homes. We were able to build homes. We were able to buy cars. We bought 2 cars, sending children to school, and when they messed up, we sent them to another school, and if they got kicked out there, we sent them to another place. We had the wherewithal, the intelligence, the vision, and we understood the way the world should live. And that's what we knew for decades. And while this was happening, these no-good Republicans and their Democratic friends watched as technology began to change, and began to change to the degree that technology that used to support and enhance labor now began to replace it. And all those factories that I talked about, 400,000 manufacturing production jobs just in the city of Detroit disappeared. 400,000. Nobody can take that kind of hit. No one. I started to talk just a little bit about a place called Ford Rouge. The Ford Rouge complex is in Dearborn, Michigan. At its height, the Ford Rouge complex was the largest automobile factory in the world. In the world. It had just over 100,000 employees. It made however many cars that they developed. And that means from the beginning, where the chemicals were added to it turned into steel, to it turned into something else and something else and something else, and at the end the car drove out of the line. Now Ford Rouge Complex is one of the few entities that still exist, and they have less than 6,000 workers, from 100,000 to 6,000 workers, and they make 4 or 5 times as many cars as was made when there was 100,000. What I'm telling you is that the history and the folks that you knew that were connected to the automobile manufacturing processes, electronic production, has changed all of that. And when I talk about these no good Republicans, and I don't want to make this water fight a Republican and Democratic deal. That's not what this is. The only reason Republicans can get away with this nonsense is because they got Democratic friends. That's how Democratic happens. And for sure, what we have is all of this destruction. And there used to be 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 million people that lived here. We're down to 700,000 plus. You cannot do with 1.5, 1.6 million people what you can do with 750,000. And the tax base is just demolished. What people used to earn, 40, 50, 60, 70, $80,000 a year, they now earn minimum wage. You can't do the same. And so the only thing people know to do is to let's start talking about privatization. And the way you do privatization is you demean, you malign, you color an entity so bad that people will say the water department in Detroit is just being run so horrifically, maybe the only thing we can do is sell it to someone else. I'm telling you, you cannot incinerate Jewish people unless you put the message out that there's something wrong with Jewish people. And you keep saying it and saying it and saying it, so when you start burning people up, nobody is saying anything. You cannot massacre Native Americans across the country unless you say the only good Indian is a dead Indian. You cannot pick up Africans all over Africa and bring them here and do God knows to whatever for hundreds of years unless you put a national narrative out that says there's something wrong with them. You need to be able to fix them. You need to be able to do bad things to them so that once those things happen, then nobody will stand up because nobody wants to be a Detroit lover. Nobody wants to be an Indian lover. Nobody wants to be a lover of whoever it is that's being denigrated. And this national narrative is going on all across the country. I tell you, this is the most demonic. I tear up thinking about it. I live in a city that is surrounded by the Great Lakes. 98% of all the fresh water in the country is right up the road. And we got people here that say you can't have water if you can't pay for it. Really? All these welfare recipients that have been cut off of assistance, all these blue-collar workers that are not working anymore, mamas, daddies, grandmothers, grandparents, don't have money, don't have income anymore, and now somebody says, well, if you don't have any money, you can't have water. Really? I'm telling you, we're gonna burn before we let this bull crap continue. Water is a public trust. I don't care what they say, how they say it. Where we at? We down to my last 30 seconds. Where we at?
No way I can cut you down.
Oh, you just get excited, I see. There's no way we're going to allow for this nonsense to continue. Right now, the water department has listed 59,980 shutoffs that are delinquent accounts that they want to shut off over the next 60 days. And we're talking about where women live, where children live, where seniors live, where veterans live, where people who are disabled live. They don't care. But the national narrative is going out. Those people in Detroit, they just this side of being criminal. They'd rather pay their cable bill, you all heard it, than pay their water bill. There's something wrong with them. I'm so hurt. I'm so upset that I knew that taking away the right to vote in Detroit wasn't going to cause a stir. People are not going to be upset by that. I knew that the fact that democracy was thrown out the window, people would be a little reluctant. Well, you know, folks in Detroit, they're so stupid. Latin Americans, they're so stupid. Native Americans, they dumb. Outside of the Middle East, the largest group of folks that have a Middle Eastern background live here. You know how dumb they are too. So after you say that, and you say it, and you say it, and then they take away the right to vote, take away your democracy and whatnot, well, I'm not going to say anything because, you know, see how stupid they are. But I thought that when somebody said we're going to turn the water off, where there are low-income people, every American in the freaking country would be on their goddamn way to Detroit. All right? Didn't quite happen that way. What did happen is that these Native Americans up in Iowa wrote a letter to the United Nations to say, what the hell is it that's going on in Detroit? And everybody said, hey, what is going on in Detroit? And that's how it started. Today we got the Amish on their way from Pennsylvania bringing barrels of water. We got the folks from, West Virginia that showed up 2 days ago with 1,840 bottles of water. We got some group from a place called Northwest Territories. I didn't know where that was. The young lady told me Northwest Territories is north of Canada. I thought the only people in north of Canada was God himself. I didn't know you could go that far and still be humanity. They're on their way with dog sleds, bringing water. This is nuts. This is nuts. But I say to you that this is the morality fight of America right here. This ain't about black, it's not about white. This is about right and wrong. Poor people in this city do not have the capacity to pay for water. And as I say, before it's all over, we will make certain that we will illegally turn on every spigot that we will find before this week.
My elder and my leader, Maureen Taylor, is an honor, but I will always follow Maureen Taylor.
Speak into the mic.
Yeah. Okay, my name is Michelle Martinez, and I'm here from Detroit.
Yeah.
Will all the Detroiters please stand up? These are our warriors. And I share gratitude. We recently lost one of our warriors. Charity Hicks. I'm going to ask for a moment of silence for our fallen warrior, Charity Hicks. She was a lover. She asked us to wage love. And that's a war that we want to get involved in.
That's right.
Because we need all the help we can get with environmental justice. Environmental justice is the slow war. Environmental justice is not the war of bombs. That's not the war that you're going to see on the television that is dynamic or explosive. Environmental justice is slow. Environmental justice comes when someone gets their water turned off. Environmental justice, or I should say injustice, comes when somebody gets their home foreclosed on. Environmental justice is when somebody can't pay their health care bill. And it's cumulative, because when you add all of that stuff up, it means your people are being displaced from their lands. It means that the water that's taken geologically millions of years to be created cannot replenish the physical and spiritual life that is generated from human being to animal and planet. Environmental justice is not a dynamic war, but it's the war that can ultimately take all of our lives. I recently was blessed with a child, and I think in 40 years, what is the fight that she will have? When we see children crossing the border, they're in a fight right now that will be a more universally felt fight when all of the children of the world are coming to drink the water of the Great Lakes. The droughts that are affecting the lands of the desertification that's happening because of climate change, people are looking for a new home. The first islands of the South Pacific was evacuated, an entire island, an entire people moved to Fiji, we have to understand the depth and the breadth of this war. And I think that in this moment, we need to say, God, please help us.
That's right. That's right.
God, please forgive us.
That's right.
We love the lives of cruising. We love the lives of being in Bailao and enjoying the wind and the cars and all of that together. We love the lives of watching TV and going to the drive-in. I love going to the drive-in. We love the lives of eating beautiful, rich food. I love mangoes and avocados, and I love these things. They enrich my life, you know? And these are the things that I don't want to sacrifice because that's a part of my life, you know? The Motor City. The Motor City, that's who we are. That's our identity. And along with the car, we created climate change.
We can make mass faster.
We are the leaders of innovation. And so while we're in this moment of political decidedness, we're at a crossroads because those that have economic power to make changes at a mass level have decided to re-up on oil and gas. So we're getting a new international crossing that's going to break ground and be completed by 2020. We're the largest northern border crossing. That means about 16,000 diesel trucks come over the bridge every day to process goods. We have an asthma rate that's 7 times the rest of the state of Michigan because our little babies breathe in and out and miss a bunch of school days because they can't breathe when they leave their house. They have to stay home with their asthma inhalers or go to the hospital and get asthma treatments. Marathon Oil, the state's only oil refinery, has re-upped on tar sands and put $2 billion into being able to process it to ship it all over. We have DTE Energy. Most of the country gets about 40% of their power from coal. Here in the Detroit metro area, we get almost 80% of our power from coal. We just got a re-up on coal-fired power plant with $2 billion invested into our Monroe coal-fired power plant. And we have Fermi 3, of course, which you can get information. That proposal would absolutely bankrupt people because we'll pay for that. We store the nuclear waste on the shores of the Great Lakes. And here we are talking about water in our homes when we don't even know how to be the stewards of this water that the entire world needs for its survival. And I'm not talking about tomorrow, I'm talking about the long haul. I'm talking about your children and your grandchildren and the generations that have ushered us forward and the entire generation that now must make a decision of humility and sacrifice, of innovation, to say, everything that I know is no good anymore. We need new solutions.
That's right.
And it's okay to say, I don't know what that solution is because I don't know what that solution is, but I know it's not what created me. And I know it's not what created this. And I know that I have the faith and the hope of the energy and the power of the people and the children and the youth and the energy and the vision and everything that has created us into this moment to create something so dynamic to usher us into a world of justice. So please, as we talk about mentoring and as we talk about coming up, please hand that torch over and trust and have the faith, because the generation below me is going to need the power to be able to do it. So thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Claudia Wilson. I'm from Detroit 15. Has anybody in here ever heard of Detroit 15?
Yeah.
Okay, raise your hand if you've ever worked in fast food before. Okay. Who agrees that it's hard work? Okay. Who knows what the minimum wage is in Michigan? What is the minimum wage? It is $7.25 federally, but in Michigan it's $7.40. But if you're a minor, it's whatever they want to give you. That's my mom. I started as a fast food worker at Burger King on 8 Mile at $5.50. I did all the work though that everyone did that made $7.40, of course. I've been organizing for Detroit 15 since, I want to say, April of 2013. I did strike. I have been striking on every strike. I've been working as an organizer, getting paid since August of 2013, and so far I have seen much progress with the workers in the campaign and just the spirit of the movement, the water and just everything that's going on in the city of Detroit. It's so good to see people are fighting and still wanting to see better things to come. We do face a lot of negativity. A lot of people are unaware of fast food workers and how many people are fast food workers, and that it is the third most hiring job in Michigan. And most of them are in poverty. Most of the workers are not children. Most of the workers are adults with responsibilities who don't afford, to eat every day, who can't afford to pay their rent on time, who can't afford to even have a car, who can't afford different clothes or even laundry detergent, toothpaste, simple necessities. I know because I tried to live on my own as a fast food worker, and I prayed every day for things to get better. I prayed and I knew that that was not life. I knew that that's not how things were supposed to be. I knew that it wasn't going to be like that forever. In February 2013, my coworker approached me, who was already an organizer, and said, "Look at this card. We need a union."
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. I'm here for fast food workers. To be able to have the right to form a union. What is a union? A union is a group of workers that have a voice. The voice that's strong enough to make a change. Fast food workers don't have a voice. We can get hired and fired without even knowing.
That's right.
I have gotten fired before, and I walked into work and they asked me, why was I there? I didn't have a job anymore.
That's right.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right that I work, or anyone should work 40 hours in a week and can't even afford to pay their car note and their car insurance on time. And I make how much money for this company? Where is my money? Where is my benefits? Where is my health insurance?
That's right.
Do you care about how I eat? Do you care about if I can sleep at night and if my kids, can afford to eat lunch every day or whatever the case may be? They don't care about us, is what we're trying to prove. And this is an international fact, not only in Detroit.
That's right.
So that's why I'm here today. I'm here to speak up for all fast food workers that are struggling, that don't have a voice. All y'all agree that it's hard. I want you guys to think about fast food. If you guys eat fast food, whenever you go inside of a restaurant, think about that cashier that you're talking to and what they have to go through when you're not around. Think about that manager.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not enough humans in the world. It's a lot of people, but it's not really a lot of humans in the world that actually have feelings and emotions and actually consider who they touch and speak to every day and what that next person is going through. That's why I'm here. Because I do, and I have a voice, and I speak up for what's right.
All right.
I'm here representing Detroit 15, which is an organization of fast food workers fighting for the right to form a union internationally and the living wage of $15 an hour. It's not trying to get rich. It's the living wage so we can be able to pay our bills on time, be able to afford a car, the simple things. It's the simple things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diane. In our city, You've heard some of this already from our panelists. I just want you to put it in the context of what we're facing on a day-to-day basis here in the city, okay? In our city, there are approximately 40 square miles of abandoned land. Thousands of homes have been lost to foreclosures, thousands have collapsed in ruins, and there's 78,000 vacant houses still remain standing. This is a city of loss of population, loss of tax base, deficient city services in lighting, transportation, repair of infrastructure. This is a city where the public school system has been dismantled and looted. This is a space of hunger, with our children the hardest hit. Infant mortality, high infant mortality rates. This is a place of homelessness and outrageous and persistent police brutality against people of color and their children. This is a space of closed parks, loss of medical services, unemployment, and theft of pensions. This is a space of profound suffering and dispossession, while millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are appropriated for demolition of homes, and hundreds of millions of dollars are paid to lawyers and other consultants to, quote, manage our city affairs. The political policies and strategies leading to this place have been in effect for many years. Practices of capitalist exploitation in Detroit are rooted in a stubborn, unrelenting racism that has fractured our city since the 19th century. Racism flared in violence from the period of the Civil War through the First and Second World Wars, exploded in the riot of 1943, and then shocked the nation in the rebellion of 1967. And during all those years, whites were moving away from the city, steadily seeking to establish neighborhoods from which they could exclude African Americans, often resorting to violent assaults in order to preserve segregation. You've just heard about that wall that separated African Americans from the evolving suburban neighborhoods. The shift of the auto companies to the suburbs and to the south further exacerbated unemployment problems among African Americans in the inner city. And while discriminatory federal housing policies facilitated the exodus of whites to the suburbs, but excluded African Americans from any of those new housing developments. Inside the city, African Americans faced additional problems. From the 50s, when the power structure spoke of urban renewal in the city, this meant black removal, uprooting the black communities and businesses from the city core. This is the legacy of racist politics, spatial politics in Detroit and the suburbs, and this legacy influences the current political dynamics of the city, where a United States version of ethnic cleansing is now in process against African Americans and other poor communities. If the intent of ethnic cleansing was not clear before the water shut-ups, it must certainly be obvious to everyone at this point. Though the 1967 rebellion expressed African Americans' frustration with long-standing socioeconomic disadvantages and injustices, the power elite responded as if they were the victims. An intense anger accompanied their abandonment of the city, and they watched scornfully as it deteriorated in population and tax base, necessary services, and overall quality of life. This resentment was represented in ongoing media bashing of the city and its African American leadership, a bashing that became increasingly hostile during the mayoral tenure of Coleman Young. The effect of this pervasive media attack was to infer that African Americans are not capable of governing ourselves, whether in the mayor's office, or as members of the city council, or as members of an elected school board. The racist propaganda was generated not only in the popular media, but also in elite publications of white intellectuals and cultural leaders. We can see the success of this propaganda in the recent mayoral campaign and election of Mike Duggan, where people were convinced, oh, those African Americans couldn't run the city, they've led into all kinds of corruption, let's put a white mayor there and correct the situation. By the mid-1970s, the corporate elite recognized its enormous mistake in abandoning Detroit, with its vital infrastructure of communications and finance, linking Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, and Canada, extending over 20,000 miles, and its location on the Detroit River, with links to the lake waterways, providing freshwater security in a time when scarcity is imminent, while also ensuring easy access to international transportation and trade. And so the reclamation began. Corporate reclaiming of the city has meant the design of two Detroits, one flourishing, affluent, inviting, meant to serve the corporate agenda, the other a neglected, abandoned wasteland. In fact, with the addition of the newly announced hockey arena plans, we can see how from Grand Boulevard right down the center of the old city core to the riverfront, a new city is evolving. A consolidation of privately owned spaces, Midtown, Illichville, Gilbertville, the riverfront. The attractive redesigned city core is successfully enticing individuals and families of the managerial class back into the city. This whiter, upwardly mobile population will provide an anchor for dominant corporate interests, managing the corporate offices, overseeing the technology, and supervising the manual laborers who clean and maintain the exclusive offices and amenities of the corporate command city. This is not the city of a massive working class that we once knew. In this city, which functions as a command city for powerful multinationals in the global economy, there's no need for a massive working class. This is a city that will not accommodate them. With the creation of this corporate-owned city with its symphony, its DIA, its opera house, its posh restaurants, bars, ballparks, and other entertainment centers, has come the increased militarization of the city police force and its integration into a network of law enforcement agencies, including Homeland Security and Border Patrol. Simultaneously, the corporate elite has launched a determined campaign to plunder the city's assets, to seize, control, reconfigure, and/or privatize major city assets and institutions. Began with the Recorder's Court, then the Detroit Medical Center, Cobo Hall, tried to do Cobo Hall, Belle Isle, and other parks, the public schools, and now to take another step towards control and privatization of the Department of Water and Sewerage. Such objectives have been facilitated by the illegal imposition of emergency managers and the circumvention of duly elected public officials by foundations and other private agencies in the processes of city policy and development. Through such strategies, the majority black populations in several Michigan cities have been totally disenfranchised. Now we know that in pockets throughout our city there are all kinds of resistance efforts going on. You've heard about some of them.
Hold it closer.
From our panelists already. Moratorium now working with against foreclosures, the environmental justice work that is going on. We also have a movement for food security in our city, and we have artists who are beginning to organize co-ops and people starting small businesses, forums in resolution of conflicts. We have all of these energies being poured into resistance and into sustaining our communities. And most recently, our involvement in providing immediate water relief for people whose water has been shut off. Detroit has a reputation for spunky organizers, innovators, right? People who come up with new ideas. But we're at a point here in the city where the energy of the organizers is being depleted by the fact that there are so many assaults coming on us at one time, right? That's one of the problems that we're facing. We can't grasp the inhumanity, the savagery, the barbarism of what is happening in our city and what is being carried out by corporate management strategies. Not only are the strategies inhumane They involve simultaneous attacks on multiple arenas of our lives with endless resources of media at their command to provide a narrative to justify what is going on. I'm almost finished. I want to quote here an article that was written by Diane Bukowski. She's a brilliant local journalist, and she's really devoted, and she's part of the resistance in our community. The paragraphs I'm going to read to you illustrate to you how power is conflated in the hands of a few individuals and agencies in our city, and it shows what we're up against as we're trying to resist this. George Jackson Jr., a DTE. DTE is the Detroit Energy, Electrical Power Agency. George Jackson Jr., a DTE executive for 27 years, is president of both Detroit Economic Growth Association and the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, as well as Detroit's Chief Development Officer. This was under Mayor. The Detroit Economic Growth Administration and the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation have the same officers and directors. The Detroit Economic Growth Corporation also serves as the professional and administrative staff for the Downtown Development Authority, the Economic Development Corporation of the City of Detroit, the Tax Increment Finance Authority, and the Detroit Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. The Detroit Economic Growth Corporation's secretary is attorney David Baker Lewis of Lewis and Mundy, which receives city contracts. Developer and builder Michael Tyson is the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation's treasurer. Directors include William Brooks, a retired GM vice president, Denise Starr, CompuWare's chief administrative officer, and Roderick Gillum, a GM vice president and chairman of the GM Foundation. Bob Rossback, spokesperson for the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, said that the Detroit Economic Growth Association and the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation are separate legal entities. I think you've been following well enough to know they're all on the same boards, right? But he's proclaiming that they are separate legal, and yes, they are, but they're the same people, right? With the separation allowing the Detroit Economic Growth Association to administer grant funds from organizations like the Kresge, Kellogg, and Skillman Foundations. Okay, so you see how the names and relationships of the players provided by Diane illustrate the concentration of the links in the apparatus of corporate power in our city. The agencies and individuals named influence so many aspects of city administration, the appropriation of land, facilities, other resources, even extending to the influence of artists and cultural production through grants, media, and public relations campaigns. Last paragraph. In the face of this kind of domination, let me conclude by saying that those of us who insist on self-determination, who insist on discovering alternative means to sustain our lives, must begin to envision and construct an altogether new society. This is what my sister was saying here. None of the methods of securing social order and justice that we've fashioned in the past apply now, because we don't have the scaffolding of law to which we could appeal before and on which we could rely. As this is a time of corporate and racist lawlessness, though we have to continue the forms of resistance with which we're familiar to hold back the assault against our humanity, it's important to recognize that there is an additional, essential kind of work that must be done. That work is the conceiving and imagining and building of new forms of community which our children and grandchildren can continue to develop. That is our calling in this time and this place. Resistance to oppressive forces on the one hand, but receiving and building of a new society on the other. Thank you, and thank you very much.